Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining and thanks for your time. As you mentioned, I'm Osamu Kasahara, the Product and Implementations Manager for Barco Healthcare. And really, many of you may be familiar with Barco more from the display side, radiology displays, etc. Barco is actually an 80-year-old company based out of Belgium, and it started originally as Belgian American Radio Company, if you can believe that. And in the 90s, they got into healthcare displays. But really, there's three segments of Barco's business. It's huge on entertainment and enterprise displays. So if you've ever gone to an IMAX theater to watch, Star Wars or whatever, those are exclusively Barco projectors. Or if you have ClickShare and other enterprise projectors, Barco has a pretty huge presence there. And as I mentioned, radiology displays. So what Barco is now doing in its digital initiatives is trying to create some synergy with its existing portfolio of collaboration and visualization tools and exploring different digital initiatives in healthcare, of which Barco Synergi is one of those initiatives. So what is Barco Synergi? Well, we are focusing in on the collaboration and display of medical imaging content, specifically in the realm of multidisciplinary teams. And multidisciplinary team meetings, called MDT in Europe and other regions, are commonly called something like tumor boards, cancer boards, or neurology boards in the US. And why we've decided to focus in on that is to bring together a lot of the technology aspects that Barco is already, well positioned in, and to, add the digital content and solve, challenges in various places in healthcare. So we decided to tackle the multidisciplinary team meetings where we have just a number of different specialists from oncology or nutrition or radiology or pathology. And every week or so, they meet together and discuss very complex patients. And really, they're working from many different systems that have information silos throughout the hospital, and they don't really communicate very well to each other. So what happens is that the preparation of this meeting becomes a very paper-driven, manual, and error-prone workflow. And what that does is it leads to meeting discussions that are often inefficient, incomplete, and potentially spending a lot of time for all of the clinicians involved. And in markets specifically like the UK and Western Europe, these MDT meetings or tumor boards are mandated by law that every cancer patient be seen by them. And there's very strict rules upon when treatment can actually be given within a 2-week period, let's say, from diagnosis until treatment. So we see that the use cases for Western Europe are very high patient volumes, very bad current paper-driven workflow, and so we see our opportunity there to really create a digital platform to address all these issues. So, I think I can jump right into a quick demo of what we're actually doing. Barco Synergi is a cloud-based solution, and it's accessible via a web browser. And as I mentioned, its focus is on the workflow of those multidisciplinary team meetings. And for instance, we have multidisciplinary meetings in lung tumors, or upper GI, or cardiology, or neurology. And we focus in on 3 aspects of the workflow of that meeting: the pre-meeting phase, where all the preparation and aggregation of all that data from different systems takes place. And what's being done now is a very manual process where a full-time employee may be responsible for 1 or 2 meetings, and they have to go hunting and seeking all of this information, either from an email request or collated on a spreadsheet, or whatever they may be doing in a very paper-driven way, and creating these patient lists for a relevant discussion during the meeting. And so what that does is that leads to a meeting that can be very inefficient, and the live meeting also has additional challenges that participants, simply can't show up at that particular meeting place in a hospital because they're doing their rounds here, or they're part of a different campus, or this is a remote person. And so the patient context during a live meeting is often lost, and it's not able to be transparent, and a well-discussed patient is often uh, an exception rather than a rule. So we'll get into a little bit of that live workflow, and then the third phase that Synergi addresses is the post-meeting phase, where the reporting has to be done. All of the patient's consultants need to be aware of the results of that tumor board meeting. The outcome needs to get to a specific system. And so again, we see workflow that is, cut and pasting different notes from the meeting into a specific system, and emailing a physician. So what Barco Synergi allows is streamline reporting into the appropriate system in the hospital. Okay, so in the application, we have the overview page where we can schedule new meetings, and each meeting is based upon a certain set of structured information fields or templates, and that can be customized by site and depending upon what the disease site is or what the specific cancer is. So we have a structured set of data with which to discuss at that meeting. So it's not like WebEx where a meeting is a meeting. When we say a meeting within Barco Synergi, it's the clinical context and relevance of that meeting. And in the My Patients menu, we have a list of all the patients that I, as the logged in user, have requested for discussion, or any of the patients that I may be consulting upon and should be aware of where they are in their discussions and what their level of readiness is for those discussions. And requesting a discussion, and here's where the redox part comes into it. So what we see is, the seamless addition of a patient into a meeting room. But what's happening on the back end is a query into a redox API or interface that can bring back all of the associated patient information that we need for this patient. So we'll go ahead and schedule this patient for discussion in our lung tumor board meeting. And we'll be given a template or a set of those structured information fields that I mentioned before, and these are specific to, in our case here, the lung tumor board meeting. We have an indicator of readiness for all of the information that the patient may need to be discussed with, and as we fill in different fields, that patient's readiness will indicate that the patient's ready for discussion. And we also have required fields that need to be filled out. So in this case, we have a question field, or the reason for discussion of this patient. So as I mentioned, all these different information silos gets collated, doctors arrive to a meeting, and then someone forgot to really say, why are we having the discussion on this meeting? So we can define that clearly and say, well, we're trying to figure out is this cancer, or whatever the case may be. And so the idea is, with the integration to Redox, all of the structured information data that we could possibly get out of those siloed information systems in the hospital, we could automatically allow that when we do a request discussion. We still allow for the manual entry of that information should that information not be available in a structured way from a specific system. But the idea would be to, get information from the EHR, the oncology EHR, maybe a lab information system, potentially a radiology information system. So all of the associated systems in a hospital can be seamlessly integrated to get that information in a single platform for the discussion of the patient. So that in the gist is the workflow of preparing patients, and we can jump quickly into the live meeting where we will showcase some of the workflow of live meeting interactions. So as I mentioned, it's a cloud-based solution, so anyone with an internet connection can jump in and follow along with the discussion. So we have the ability to launch what we call live stages, and the live stage is really both a presentation screen for the live in-person meeting. So if you're physically in a meeting room with a projector, you may have one or more of these showing all of the patient information. It can also be used for different participants, both in-person and remote, to do what we call Barco Smart Sharing. So Barco Smart Sharing is using some of the enterprise collaboration tool technology that I mentioned earlier to bring that content into the meeting in a seamless way and in real time. So what I just did is I initiated this little green outline to share that content into the meeting on the live stage. So I can launch it again on a different, I'll launch it on a different computer that I have and showcase, the different types of content that can be shared within Barco Synergi. And so why this is important is that, radiologists, they definitely don't want to learn a whole new tool set while they're presenting their cases. So Barco Synergi allows their exact same tool set to be used, and pathologists as well. So it's really a vendor neutral and friendly way to present all of that content within the meeting. Any questions so far in what we've seen?
We do have one question. Charisse asks, is the recal in real time? That is to say, is info immediately available?
So in terms of when we make the patient request discussion, or in terms of the live meeting when we're showing in real time?
I think that was around the patient request was when she entered that question. So
okay.
Yeah.
Yes. So once that information is either aggregated via the integration feed or manually entered within Barco Synergi, it's then a part of that patient's readiness within the meeting. So all meeting participants can go log in to the meeting and preparation phase. They can see the entire list of patients and all of the information that's been collected for each patient.
Well, very nice. That was a tricky demo to pull off here, but you did a good job.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll show is that when all of the outcomes are discussed, we can automatically approve those outcome reports within Barco Synergi, and it is available from within the system. And what that approval mechanism does in the meeting is it directly sends these reports to the appropriate integrated reporting system or systems that would require this result. So all of the patient information we've gathered at time of preparation, as well as all the discussed clinical outcomes and who discussed those patients and when it was approved. So this is done in real time in the meeting, rather than the manual process that exists now, where hours or days later, that meeting coordinator has to manually enter that report and manually notify the appropriate consultants or general practitioners. So that is actually the finish part.